Hi everyone, how's it going? Um, First of all, I've just returned home from London. I don't know if you can see that there's more marks on my face. It's because the electronic torture was a bit more obvious over there, so there was a lot more skin irritation. I wasn't getting bitten because my dad doesn't have any insects in his house, nothing like that. So these marks are definitely from electronic torture, these scabs right here. So and there was aircraft flying quite frequently over my dad's house. So, yeah, that's where the marks are from. That's why I've got so many marks on my face. Um, I've just come back from my ex's mum's house. He, both he and she very kindly had me stay over there because when I came home last night, it was actually last night when I came home, the electricity was out and there were all kind of thoughts running through my mind. I knew that somebody had been in the property because even though I left some things on standby when I left, like the fridge, because there was still stuff in it, I left some things on standby. Even though I did that, what I noticed was when I was gone, there seemed to be certain surges in energy when I wasn't in the property. There were surges in energy. And then I noticed on a particular day, that energy level had dropped. The electricity level had dropped. So that's why it was like, like sort of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was highest, and then there was no recordings on Thursday, and then on Friday, no electricity. I think it was Friday or Saturday. Friday was a little bit of electricity, the least bit of electricity, and then Saturday, nothing. And I feel like that's when one of the circuits in this flat in particular were tripped. Now, at first, I had thought that utility had cut the power off. So this is what I thought happened. I thought that the people breaking into my flat were using my electric and that utility had cut me off, cut my electricity off. But both my friend and utilita informed me that it's actually against the law to do that now. You can't just cut people's electricity over here in the UK. You can't do that. So even if I hadn't paid some of the bill from Utilita, the only thing they would do is move me over to prepay. And even then, I'd still be able to have my electricity, especially given that I'm a vulnerable person. So they're keeping on the electric. So it wasn't them. I went to investigate the issue. Um, I noticed that all the breakers were still on, but everything else was off. So what I did was I turned it off, then turned it back on again, and it seemed to be okay for the most part. Didn't seem to have any problems, but I tried to use one of my laptops in here. Like I have several. Don't ask. They're all old anyway. But it's like I used one of my laptops. It was a particularly very old one, and I plugged it in just to give it some power, give it a little bit of a boost. And it was when I plugged it out that everything went off again. And I'm thinking, okay, that's odd. So that would certainly explain why the power went off last time when I wasn't here. Because when I wasn't here, somebody was in my flat, tripped something, and then everything went off, right? And so the original theory of somebody breaking into my house using my electric and utilita um cutting off the power, utilita cutting off the power, that was the first theory I had that was wrong. Then the laptop cuts out. I flip the switch, flip it back on again. Only this time, when I flip back on the breakers on the fuse box, there's crackling going on. There's crackling and there's a smell coming off it. So what I end up doing is I end up alerting the landlords of what's going on. Then I call 105 to find out, assess what the damage is. And then upon their advice, because that's what they advised me to do, I call the fire brigade. Fire brigade comes over, they check the breakers, and they say, yeah, there's definitely a smell coming from it, but there's no smoke. So where there's no smoke, there's no fire. They suggested that I could contacted the landlord again and see if there was a further problem electronically. And I do that. I contact the power board, and I don't think I was the only one who did it. I think the landlord might have done it as well, because I was on the phone to the UK Power. I think it's UK Power or something. It's UK Power anyway. And I contact them, or rather they contacted me after the fire brigade had been down here, and they said, well, basically you need to talk to your landlord about getting an electrician out. And I said, cool. Next thing I know, in the afternoon, UK Power sends their electrician over, and they said they can't smell anything. And I'm thinking, this is why it's relevant. This is why it's relevant to gang stalking. Because I'm over here, I can smell it. It's as clear as day. There's a burning smell, or there's some sort of smell of fried plastic or something. And they're saying that there's no smell. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. So they're saying that there's no smell, and they're investigating the fuse box. So there's a difference between the fuse box and the circuit breakers. The circuit breakers are the ones that domestic electricians take care of, and the fuse box is the one that the national engineers that UK Power sends out. They are the ones who have touched the fuse boxes. According to what I've been told, the fuse boxes are the ones that the national guys touch, and the circuit breakers are the ones that the domestic people touch, the circuit breakers and the meter. So they're saying it's not coming from the fuse box, thank God. But then the landlord sends their engineer down here. This particular electrician / handyman is very friendly with everyone, gets on with everyone. So he comes over and he investigates it. Now he can smell something. Both him and the guy that usually works with him can smell something. And he says it's coming from the circuit breakers. It's coming from the breakers. And he started talking about loose transfers. And I said, well, what's that? It's basically the screws on the breakers, which is the switches on the fuse box. If those circuit breakers are loose, they have loose screws. Electricity can basically communicate between the wire and the screw. I'm using lay terms here so that I can get a basic understanding. Well, so that I can give you guys a basic understanding of what's going on. If you've got fuse switches and they're not screwed on tightly enough, what happens is that the wire and the screws, they start sending tiny electrical currents between one another, and that's what causes the crackling. That's what causes it to crackle and pop. In fact, I went in there, and after he tightened the screws, it's still crackling, which means that the screws might be old or something might be going wrong with that. So he tightened the breakers, he tightened the screws around the breakers, he tightened the transfers, and it seemed to be okay. Why am I telling you all this? Well, if you leave your flat for an extended period of time, not only can people come in here and mess with your electricity, they can also mess with your fuse boxes. And if that problem with the fuse boxes isn't solved in time, it can literally cause a fire. So if I hadn't have come back and I hadn't have solved that problem, and I wouldn't have been insistent on it, if I hadn't have done that, not only could there have been a fire raging in this flat, there would have been a fire that reached the upstairs living room first. And the upstairs living room is the one that has all the guests in there. That's where all the family congregates in there. So if I hadn't have solved the problem, it wouldn't have just been my life in danger. It would have been several lives in danger here. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And at least one business that would have been lost, not to mention the one beneath me, if I hadn't caught those circuit breakers in time. Because when those circuit breakers catch fire, when those circuit breakers start sparking between each other enough, it can cause a fire. And what the point that I'm making is that anybody with the most basic electrical knowledge could loosen those circuit breakers when you're not in your flat, when you're not present in your home. Now, I was here worried about the wrong things. I was worried about like my groceries and, you know, I was worried about where people are going to be putting my things. Don't get me wrong, they do stuff to your personal items as well. But the more worrying thing is when they start doing stuff to your electricity when you're not in the house. Now, luckily I wasn't there when the breakers started crackling and popping and all the rest of it. Luckily I wasn't there, right? But imagine if I was there when it first started cutting out. That was days that those transfers were not fixed. It was days that those loose transfers were not fixed while I was not there. And it's only when I come back now that those motherfuckers are fixed. So now I've got questions. Like, first of all, even with all of that solved, I was wrong about utilita. I was wrong about the mold potentially causing the fuse box issue. I was wrong about all of those things, but it still doesn't answer the question of how there was extra electrical usage in my flat during the time from January 2nd to February the 7th or February the 8th. It still doesn't account for how there was additional electricity being used in my flat when I was not here. That's the question that remains unanswered. What the fuck were they doing in here? Because I looked on my laptop and I saw a piece of Samsung equipment. My laptop was connected to a piece of Samsung equipment that I don't recognize. So my thing is, who the fuck has been in here? It still doesn't answer that question. I've asked the landlord who has been in here. I've tried to talk to Utilita, tried to get an account of the daily usage of electricity to ascertain who's been in here. I haven't heard anything back from Utilita. That's incredibly suspicious. So through all the theories that I've gone through as to why my circuits are breaking out, okay, as to why my electricity is going out, okay, yeah, we solved that issue, and now I'm getting it fixed tomorrow, or it could be even fixed even sooner than that because I heard crackling again. Look, so it's the problem of where the cuts are happening have been solved, right? But the question of who the hell has been in my flat, still not answered. Now, I don't know if you can hear this properly. See if you can hear it, because I can smell burning. See if you guys can hear it. It's gone quiet now. But there was a smell before, and it was crackling, which means that the transfers are still loose, and it didn't matter how much the handyman tried to tighten the screws, it wasn't tightening. So my question is, how did it get like that when I was gone? That's a question that I have, because even when nobody has been in here, even if nobody had been in here, we still have to ask the question of, were directed energy weapons able to cause this? Because if they can be fired on my body, and they have been fired on my body repeatedly, it stands to reason that those same directed energy weapons can be fired on circuit breakers and fuse boxes. So my thing is, the loose transfers could have come from a number of ways, but according to the handyman himself, the transfers around the circuit breakers on my fuse box should not be that loose that quickly, because I've only been here for 3 years, according to him. So my thing is, how did the circuit breakers get loose? And he also noticed that there was a little bit of soot somewhere or a little burn somewhere. So how did that happen? How did all of this happen? I've got questions about what the hell happened here when I was gone. This is why I didn't leave my flat. This is why I don't leave my flat unless I absolutely have to. But now I'm thinking I should start leaving more often, because who knows what else I might be able to find once I do. I might get even more evidence that I'm looking for. Maybe I should leave my flat more often, let these people expose themselves. Because if they're really, I know they did something. I know the gang stalkers came in here and did something and fucked with my electricity. If they are really willing to risk not only my life, but the life of the people upstairs, the life of the people in the Indian shop, if they're willing to risk the Indian place and the nail bar that's north of me, if they're willing to risk the Indian restaurant that is I think it's the west of me, to the west of me, if they're willing to risk the lives of the neighbors upstairs, all of this just to get a rise out of me, and all of this just to see what I'll be able to do, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much further they're going to take this. That's why all that boring, that boring prologue that I gave you about circuit breakers and fuse boxes was important, because once they fuck with your electricity, it can cause a fire. That's why that long, boring story was necessary. Because if they cause a fire in there, that's at least 2 businesses that are in jeopardy. And that's 1 family potentially in jeopardy alongside me that's potentially in jeopardy. So that's what I'm saying. If there is all of this risk just to be able to try to get a rise out of me, it lets you know how desperate the gang stalkers are. Baby, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. As for whether or not the handyman did it, I can't cast aspersions like that. I can't say, because I was wrong several times on the reasons why the power went out. And I think that the focus on the power going out rather than who the hell has been in my flat using the electric in the first place, I think the focus on the power going out was strategic, personally. But lives could have been cost because of that strategy. That's what I'm saying. When I say gang stalking, when I say that the people behind gang stalking do not give a single fuck about the perps, I am not lying to you. They will put businesses at risk. They will put families at risk. They do not care. And it came after me. Gang stalking came after me and my family. But you know how gang stalking works. You know how our governments are. You know how our leaders are. They're like, they're fucking carnivorous leeches. They don't stop. They will only stop when they drop. And that's when it'll end. And they're willing to do anything and everything. Their tactics were already dangerous. They were already causing me organ damage and causing the people that they hired to bug me organ damage. Now they're moving on to structural integrity. Like, hey, yo. Now they're moving on to structural integrity. I can't make this shit up. And that burning smell, I've been smelling that it wasn't just for a few days, like before I left, before my mum was killed, I had been smelling that for like weeks, and I couldn't place where it came from. I thought somebody was burning incense or somebody was burning something outside. Now I know it was the circuit breakers. So how long have they been like that Who did that? And what the fuck was going on while I was out of the flat? In fact, the main question is, what the fuck was going on while I was out of the flat? What was going on? And I know what you guys are going to say, about, how much I'm going through right now. Listen, for those of you who are about to bring up how much I've gone through, how much I'm going through right now, I appreciate that. And yes, you're right. You're right. This is bullshit. This is a lot. Like, on top of, basically murdering my mother, now they're going to compound on the issue by holding back my return by a week through attacking my back and my hips like the cowards they are, only to take it off after a couple of days when they realized that that my claims were becoming too legitimate. Now they try to cover their ass. It's a lot to deal with, like my mum being murdered, and then on top of that, spine and hips, and then on top of that, this electronic situation, who's been in my house, all that type of stuff. I know you're going to say it's a lot, and it is a lot. I'm not saying it that it isn't, but you have to remember how this program works. It is at your most vulnerable moments, at your times during peak stress, that these attacks ramp up. It's at those times, because those times are usually the most effective to drive down your immune system, drive down your nervous system, drive down your natural defenses. This is the time when they normally do it. So you can be disgusted, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can be all of these things, for me and for other people who go through shit like this. But the one thing you must never do is let those emotions cloud your judgment. This is what they do. This is what they do. And the longer we try to suspend disbelief, is the more they keep winning, and the more we stop seeing them coming. No, we need to maintain a clear head here. They were always going to do this. Like, throughout my grief, they were always going to find a way to exploit that vulnerability so that they could get what they wanted out of the situation. It was always going to be like that. Head in the game. That's all we can do. As for me, I'm going to cry when I need to. I'm going to mourn when I need to. I'm going to admit that it hurts when I need to. I'm going to do all of that when I need to. Regardless of what anyone else has to say about it, I'm going to do that. But we must use our brains, and we must make clear-headed decisions. And we can't do that if we're led too much by our emotions. And I can't believe this is me saying this, but it's one thing for us to accept our emotions, and it's one thing for us to, accept our emotions and to honor our emotions and to respect and accept our emotions. It's one thing to do all of those things, but it's another thing to let them rule us to the point where we can't think straight. I've lost my mother. I'm grieving. I'm sad. That pain is always going to be there. It's never going away. Okay, what next? Do you understand? I'm getting older. I'm becoming more emotionally resilient to the gang stalking. What's going to happen next? They're going to attack my physical body more. I'm going to struggle more with walking. I'm going to struggle more with being able to do things for myself, because that's what they're going to attack. Okay, now what? What's the plan? What's the plan? What can be done whilst their power to erode your life is more limited? What can you do in the meantime? What can be done in the meantime whilst you still have relative strength to beat off some of their attacks? Like, what's next? Focus on that. That's all we can focus on for now. Because people are out here dropping like flies. People are getting murdered all over the place. And it's not by accident. We know it's not by accident. Head in the game. We're in a war. You saw how far they, I've told you how far they were willing to go. There are circuit breakers fucking loose. There are circuit breakers loose. A fire could have started in here. A fire could have started in here and affected at least 2 businesses. And a family upstairs, the same family who were targeting me. That just goes to show you how little perps actually give a fuck. Just goes to show you how much they really don't care. How much gang stalking does not care about anybody. Oh, anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and get some sleep. I don't think I'm going to be able to get any sleep tonight. I don't know why. Maybe grief or something, but I don't know. But I'm going to try and get some rest. I hope you guys are doing all right. Please let me know, my fellow TIs, how you're doing. If you've made it this far, please let me know how you're doing. For any non-Christian TIs or any spiritual TIs, please check out Empress Justice Tarot and Empress Justice Daily. I've been late on some of the readings because honestly, after traveling and grieving, I'm really, really tired. But I will try to get out the readings as quickly and as efficiently as I possibly can. And of course, I'm still doing private readings. Yes, I am grieving, but truth be told, like, you know, I got to do what I got to do. So if you guys are looking for any private readings, I have a price list. But in order to find out the price list, you have to email me. So like, check out Empress Justice Tarot and Empress Justice Daily. Yeah, trust me, if I was making money, I'd be in a lot of problems right now. But yeah, I do need the audience. So whatever you can give to my readings, that would be wonderful. The views, subscriptions, likes, all of that. Please support me, okay? As a fellow TI. I love you guys. Peace and blessings. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.